Dada! Welcome to this episode of African Spirituality. I want to talk today about funerals and what they represent, how the process is from this perspective. I know a lot of you are currently still mourning, and that this video may be, just a way to give you a different perspective in terms of what mourning is really like from my African tradition. So, first of all, for us, when people are transitioning to the spirit world, it is not so much a moment to grieve, but a moment to celebrate the accomplishment, to also provide them energy so that they can actually reach the spirit world with a whole bunch of power. So most of the time during the funeral, first of all, people will have you have the latitude to grieve in the way that is most conducive to you. So unlike the Western perspective where people are kind of expected to cry or expected not to show too much emotion, this is really much out of the door. You can express as much pain and as much sorrow as you would like to, or you can be also very much contained into yourself without getting no different, without raising eyebrows, if you like. Traditional ceremonies, they will have some professional criers, as we call them. That means women, generally women, who will basically sing and cry during the entire ceremony to exemplify the sorrow and the loss that's going through the fact that this individual actually is going to reach the ancestors and stay with the ancestors. In my Bamileke tradition, usually the color for funeral is blue, and I think this goes really much in line with this chakra systems and color therapy and all the different things, all the different information and different systems, simply because blue is also the color of communication, is usually the color of the throat chakra. And it's just to exemplify that during this transition, you are still communicating with your loved one. It's not as seen in the Western world, where when the person's transition is pretty much it, or maybe you'll get them if they want to talk to you or to spirit conversation and things like that. In the African spirituality, because the world of the visible and the invisible is one, as this person transitions, the person remains with you. The energy of the person is always there for you to tap into. You should never feel like you are being alone. Matter of fact, I remember very vividly my grandmother saying that there are certain ancestors that transition to the spirit world just so they can stay there and watch over you. And so long as they're watching over you and so long you have that presence around you, no one else can do anything to you in terms of distracting you from your own path, or in terms of having some negative influence into your spirituality, your energy, or sometimes even in your physical body. So for us, it's very important to stay in tune that this person may be leaving their body here. The body may be dead. The body may be, going through those changes and decaying, but the spirit and the energy of the spirit remains full and just can never be destroyed, and basically always remain with you. And because it is for us in a sense that the ancestors are coming back, they can be honored by giving a name, by coming back again, by honoring them, by giving them another name of one of our children. And every time you call that child, at the same time you are empowering and giving energy to that ancestors. And usually when you're giving the name of the child, the reason why you're giving them are names of people who accomplished a lot, and this is part of recognizing their contribution to the community, recognizing what they've done and their work in the material world, in the visible world. But at the same time, it is not because of this transition that there is a blockage or there is a wall. You have direct sorry, can't talk today, but you have direct ability to communicate with them. Matter of fact, as my grandmother was telling me, has always taught me, is that unlike the Western phrases of saying rest in peace, which I never really, I kind of understand where it comes from, but I don't really quite get it, especially in a context where you have population that are going under so much suffering. And I think this may be part of the reason why the suffering keeps going on without the ancestors intervening that much. Because for us, if you're going through some type of challenges or difficulties, you are always calling on the ancestor to assist you and to help you resolve these matters. For us in the Bamileke tradition, we often say to ask the ancestor to open the way for you. You know, some people will talk about candle road openers. We didn't use candle. We basically asked the ancestor to open the road, to get rid of some blockages that are in front of us, or to get rid of whoever is trying to prevent us from going where we need to and accomplish what we are supposed to be accomplishing. And I think the fact that a lot of people got away from the fact that the ancestors are just there to assist you and just tell them to rest in peace is part of the reason why the ancestors are not intervening as much. So if you're having any type of difficulties that way, it may be because you're always you're sending contradictory messages to your ancestor. In one way you're saying rest in peace, in another way you're saying I need assistance, I need help. And because it is an ongoing relationship that you have with them, you know, it's kind of saying, you know, I'm calling the police, and then 5 minutes later calling back and saying, no, I don't need you anymore. You know, it's kind of that vibe, kind of that message. So if you're having difficulties in your ancestral workings and your ancestral ritual and work, it may be because you're sending mixed messages. And it's good to stay clear and to remain on the same vibration until the questions or the requests that you've had actually materialize. Then you can tell them to go rest in peace. Then you can tell them to stay in peace and all those different things. Just avoid sending mixed messages. And for us, you know, there are ways where you can call in several. The bigger the challenge you're facing, and the more ancestors you could call to your rescue. And as in some tradition, actually, they were saying that a lot of these god and goddesses are actually the ancestors of certain individuals, which would completely make sense, because when you transition from the material world to the spirit world, you embody certain characteristics, especially if you've done things in your life. So when I look at the different orishas, part of that is, for me, it's clear that they are embodied some physical characteristics based on each of their profile and each of the stories that come along with them, which are very personal, which are very human stories. So it will make sense that these are actually ancestors that transition and are now being worshipped as deities. So in that case, when you are having challenges, you should call on them, and the more of them you're calling, and the more impact you will have. And of course, there's always a caveat, and the caveat here is really you are calling on them, or a lot of them, because the situation is really dear, because it's a situation that you cannot resolve it on your own, because you've probably tried resolving on your own and you couldn't do it. Therefore you turn to your grandfather, your grandmother, and all of the other ancestors to assist you in that, and to assist you in being able to find a resolution that will benefit you. So when you think about, you know, some of the celebrities passing out, and especially if you're in North America, if you're African American, or, you know, in the diaspora anywhere, you should know that when somebody is transitioning, then they're not gone. So I understand the sadness of not having them around, even though some of them are celebrities that many of you probably didn't know on a personal level. But their music is still there, their accomplishment is still there. And sometimes, instead of just being there and, you know, filling yourself up with a lot of negativity, a lot of sadness, it's good. If you do have sadness, you have to express and release it. But it is also, you should also be filled with joy. We should also be filled with, you know, all of the accomplishment and all of the challenges that these people overcome, all what they contributed to the world, they contributed to the community. I mean, for somebody like Prince, the amount of knowledge that he's shared throughout the years, through his music, through his interviews, and through his philanthropic work is amazing. It was the same way with Whitney Houston. There's a lot of stars, that celebrities that passed away, but that transition, but that gave so much. And I think sometimes holding on too much to the pain and the fact that transition is kind of demeaning the accomplishment and the contribution that they made while they were alive. And if you really think about the fact that, you know, when you're calling onto them, you're calling onto certain aspect of their character to empower you, it's a much more it's a much more powerful vehicle to use in terms of knowing that the energy is still on this planet, that the energy is still here around us. And that is something that should not just make you sad, it should also empower you, it should also make you smile, to remember all those good memories. And through those memories, they will always live with us here. So was just a quick video on mourning and how, you know, this different perspective may assist you in this time of need. And this time, I know that many other celebrities have passed away. I'm not going to name them all, but for the Black diaspora here in North America, there's been a lot of great elders that have transitioned, and I know a lot of people have questions about that, but I just say, you know, as people transition, more will come back. And you know, this is why if you are pregnant at this time, it is also a great time to know that you are bringing back some of the greatest individual that we'll ever have. And so use your pregnancy really wisely to make sure you bond with that child, to make sure you are already preparing him or her for the goodness that they will have and the greater impact that they will have in this world. And don't feel sad. I think there's going to be a lot of other people calling their children Prince and maybe honoring him that way, and whether it is first name or middle names, or you know, nickname names and what have you. And also honoring what he stood for in terms of his contribution to music, in terms of being so versatile in the number of instruments that he could play, in terms of writing his own music, his own lyrics, and being pretty much really much in tune and working for the community. So those are just wonderful characteristic to look into an individual. Of course, it's gonna be a lot of negative aspect as well, but focus on the positive, especially when the positive outweighs the negative, so you can take the best out of that. You know, the goal here is always to improve yourself, to improve the community, and to improve everybody else. So with that note, please let me know that my thoughts are with you, and that in this moment you should, if you would like to, you can always light a candle, dedicate a space in your altar, not just for Prince, but for a lot of the elders that have transitioned, and to know that instead of them resting in peace, to know that they can dedicate their energy to make each of our lives and our community or our nation much better, and that they can continue to assist us in contributing and in improving the condition of our people. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.